down there.
I'll move down there. And then I can put the chair back.
No,
Okay.
no, I was in New York City.
Thank you, Lynn.
Sorry.
Okay.
Your consideration is only exceeded by your good luck.
I didn't know if you were going to take a...
I know.
How's Theo? Is he feeling better?
I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, let me move. I'm in everyone's
going
way.
anywhere.
I'm very sorry.
Really, really
Walk back this way.
It wasn't his teeth,
You don't get it. But oh, you got gifts for me. I guess it takes a while for them to come in.
some of my kids took a long time.
Daycare was like, I was like, oh, how's he doing? Sitting there, like, how's he doing today?
Just a little whiskey.
Yeah, throw the whiskey on there.
Just put some whiskey in his mouth. It's fine.
They're like, he just wants to be still. Okay, I'm like, try to put him down. He starts like, hi.
I think they all have. Yeah. It's just now coming out.
I feel better.
So you guys had the same exact board, right? There were no changes?
No changes.
Nice.
Hi. You caught me just as I was...
It's nice because then you don't have a learning curve.
Oh, not yours.
No, mine you can give out. Little chat.
I didn't read it.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, no, I don't have to. I don't know.
Hello, I'm well. How are you? On to the next.
I am on a couch.
I'm sick and I don't like to hear either.
Student assessment. I put it at 80, I think I used 55,000.
This is my mantra, this little bird fish.
I like that.
I love this. I say that all the time. Because it's true. We all learn differently, at different rates.
Yeah.
Some of us are good at art, some of us are good at math.
Yeah, I overdid it with no leafing.
Oh, it's a little sore, huh?
Yeah, a little sore.
There's this guy.
Yeah.
Huh?
You got them all done at least?
No, I got my son is flying in. Actually, should be driving up from Newark Airport. I got some piles.
Jay, it's really nice here. Yeah.
No.
Hey, we're lucky we got it.
I get it.
This person right here, the halftime person that you talked about today.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, we did 316 mile an hour.
Good to see you.
The halftime. Remember the educational system. There's another.
Yeah, no, I just asked Kim.
I don't know what he, I don't, I didn't even,
So
I don't even know
I'm
what
going to send her just a bunch of stuff, presentation slides. I said it's the old, she knows the director.
We go to my sister-in-law's. I can leave word. This year, my brother. So I have to, Wednesday night, I have to pick him up and he's staying with Sunday. My sister.
Ask in the doctor to look at my hip and everything. I took X-rays.
I never done it either.
They said the guy, they were absolutely going gaga. So perfect, the fit. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
No at all. And the pulse that goes down.
It's like a world one.
I just couldn't. Yeah. It was just going. Yeah, talk about technology, and I don't know. I just when people badmouth the healthcare system that we have in the United States, I just
Hampton Board is voting on it tonight.
I think second. Yeah, it's always
Missed the fact where, Boston, New York,
oh yeah, that's true.
Yale,
Yeah.
They're all right by us.
One of them has.
But this was just
Give them to me,
Norwich
so
House.
I can get you a new one.
They're doing
They're all, I don't have any solids.
I would take a solid, like, forest.
We can talk about it more now.
What's that?
Happy about getting this exact one. Do you ever get solids?
This?
I have
Oh, my-
four right
no,
now,
not
and they're
mine.
just like
No, she,
I am. These are my notes for tonight. Yeah.
It's red.
Trust me, they fit on this.
heathered, heathered red, heathered blue.
I'm just trying to write them neater.
Good to see you.
so you guys,
See you.
everybody all set? Everybody,
Those are the
everybody ready to go?
solids I got. Solids are so hard to get.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was so much, like,
Okay, good evening and welcome to the East Lyme Board of Education meeting for Monday, November 20th, 2017. This is a regularly scheduled meeting. I'll call the meeting to order, and for everyone who can rise, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comment? Any member of the public wish to address the board on any matter? Linda?
In case it's a long meeting, I thought I'd go early.
Good prediction, good
As the night
prediction.
progresses. I'm Linda Johansson, as you know, Teachers Association President. I just wanted to encourage the board that as we look toward the budget, as you look toward the budget, each of the schools really could use a full-time psychologist and a full-time school social worker. It's when a kid has a meltdown and you have a part-time person and they're not in your building that day, it's a really tough thing. It's hard for the kids, it's hard for the teachers. Each of the schools really does need a school social worker and a school psychologist. So we're advocating for that, and we thought we'd say that early.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Anyone else wish to address the board at this time? No? Okay, we have some minutes for our approval. We have the minutes from the November 6th meeting, which was a regularly scheduled meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the November 6th regularly scheduled meeting.
Second. Barbara seconds it. Any corrections, adjustments to those? No? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Joe, would you like to abstain from that one? Just
What did I do?
you missed that one.
Oh, I just saw my name down here, then vote pro, someone take me out. On motion under approval of minute, oh. Yeah, should I go out of that then?
Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I'll abstain.
Okay, good. Okay, so we got those. And then we also have our Board of Education special meeting, which was our budget workshop that we had on November 15th. It was held at Central Office.
I'll take that.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget workshop minutes from November 15th.
Second. Barbara seconds it. Any corrections, adjustments to those? Very good workshop. Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Let's see. Amy, were you missed that one?
I've got my, yep.
Okay, I didn't see it. And then Joe. All right, so we have those. And then we had, do we need to approve?
That's enough.
Huh?
That's enough.
Huh?
That's enough.
No, yeah.
I don't know if
That's
we need
enough.
to approve them if there wasn't a quorum.
Yeah, so we'll just say that we did have a special meeting of the Board of Education, just in case we had a quorum of the Board of Ed show up for the community presentation on the district's long-range plan. And since we did not have a quorum, there are no meeting minutes. However,
It's a presentation.
there is the copy of the presentation that's available, and you had pretty good turnout, too.
Yeah,
from what I
we had about 30
understand.
parents,
That's great. That's fantastic.
How many people showed up?
About 30. Yeah, it's wonderful. So, it was a cold, rainy, was it raining that night? No, it was cold.
It was a
cool.
cold night.
Yeah, it was a cold night. Okay. Special reports. We have our high school students here.
Yes, good evening everyone, I guess I'll start off. So we had a Veterans Day Assembly at the high school on November 10th, and it was very successful. We had both student speakers and a guest speaker from the Navy. In addition, there was a video of students and staff thanking the veterans for their service. And then as well, to end the assembly, the band and orchestra played the official songs of the various branches of the armed forces, and the various veterans stood up and exited when their song was being played. So it was a nice assembly overall. Also, the Veterans Day 5K was held on the 11th. It was the first this year, and there were around 80 runners and members from National Honor Society, the Peers Reaching Out Club, and the boys cross country team helped to organize the event and hand out water. A junior at high school, actually, Matt Cum, came in first for that event of the race. Shirts were given to the members, to the winners, and once again, the profits went to the New London Homeless Hospitality Center.
Very nice.
As for sports, today winter sports just started up. Swimming just practiced for the first time today, and indoor track has also had a few practices. And powder puff football tomorrow at 7 against the juniors versus the seniors.
Good. Wow. Great.
All right, some other events going on in the school. There's not, I don't know, we kind of felt like this was a little bit of a lull after Speaker Week and Veterans Day and everything. But a couple of things going on coming up in the near future. The Peers Reaching Out Club will actually be hosting their annual Breakfast with Santa on December 16th. So that's always a really cool thing to help the local community. And there's also a Poetry Out Loud poetry recitation competition that will be held at East Lyme High School on January 8th, I believe. And there's a workshop for that. That's going to be December 20th. And the school winner will move on to the state round and then possibly the national round. And there are monetary prizes for that of $200 for the state round and then potentially $20,000 if you win the national competition. So yeah, that's kind of a cool thing. And the other big thing that kind of just finished, Mrs. Hardy's Contemporary Issues class has returned from the Princeton Model Congress in Washington, D.C. Last night, well, not that late, 8 o'clock. I was actually on that trip, and it was 4 days of good discussion of legislation drafted by, I believe, around approximately 1,000 students that were in attendance there.
Wow.
And so that was good. I know that a lot of these students from our class, their bills were passed through their committees and then full House or full Senate. So that was really cool. I personally was on the cabinet, and so that was cool to kind of get to see the duties of the executive branch and draft some executive orders, pass some legislation. So yeah, it was a good time. Good learning experience, I think. That's all we have.
Great, great. Any questions for our high school representative? No? No? Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Is college applications, is that all, you guys all done with that?
Sort of.
I was sitting there and you said senior. I was looking at Conrad and I was going, I wonder if it's either.
Yeah, so
I got it all figured out.
Yeah, so early decision and early applications were November 1st.
Yeah.
Those were the deadlines for that. And then regular decision is January 1st. So we're kind of halfway there.
So we're in the middle.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Couple more
Good.
schools to apply there.
Just another thing to do, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Selectman representative, Mark Salerno.
As you guys know, you probably will be discussing later too, we have some budget uncertainty again from the state. So we're trying to digest the new state numbers, and we realize that even these numbers may not be the final numbers that we're getting, so we're looking at that. I'm sure you guys are going to have to do the same. This Saturday is the holiday stroll, starts at 3 p.m. At 5 o'clock, Santa arrives. The Jingle Bell Run is coming up December 9th at 10 o'clock, and proceeds go to the Brian T. Daigle Foundation. We appointed John Kleinhans to the Cable Advisory Committee, I think was the recommendation.
Right. Yep.
And swearing in, I don't have the date, but it's the first week of December, so congrats to everyone that's been reelected.
Swearing in day?
Where's it going to be?
You know, I was.
And we don't know when.
I didn't have time to.
I think it's
What's that?
December 4th.
We don't know
It
where.
was either 3rd or 4th, and it's the 4th, yeah.
And where?
Okay.
Where's
I think it's at the town hall.
at town hall?
Yeah.
It's always somewhere different.
Yeah, it's always.
I think
It's
it's at the
been
town
here
hall.
in the Commons, it's been at the senior center, it's been,
At Camp Niantic, too.
It's been a campaign, yeah.
Okay, good. Any questions for Mark?
Share with the town buildings, you know?
Yeah.
Are the, is the uncertainty, I know we're probably going to, Jeff's going to update us, but the uncertainty on the budget numbers, that's due to our governor's,
Governor last week took the budget and decided to cut town aid think we were getting cut another 600 and something thousand on top of the 400,000.
Yeah.
So we're going to be impacted over $1 million from last year. And that's just for this quarter. If revenues don't come in potentially by April, there could be other rounds of cuts.
There could be another one.
We get paid, obviously, we get money from the state in quarters, I believe, quarterly. So this is just the first quarter payment.
Yeah.
So it's still uncertain what's going to happen. But we know up front that unless the State House and Senate act, which they still may act, they don't go back into session, I think, until next year, but they could have a special session, because I know there's some talk that this is not what the House,
Agreed.
Senate, and House wanted.
So there's an outside chance that monies might come back.
There is an outside chance.
Yeah, and then there's
Yes. We could
probably
only be
a
hopeful,
stronger
but not
chance
likely.
that we may even get another hit.
Right. This hit doesn't include that they're already projecting revenues are going to be down
Yeah,
180 million
that's-
by the
yeah,
end of the
that's
year.
what I hear.
That's
Yeah.
not this.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a shaky year.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's exciting. All set. We have a Salem board rep here. George?
Hi.
Jackson?
We're working our way through the strategic planning process. We meet with Jonathan Costa on the 1st of December to have the committees report out. We'll see where we go from there. Salem's finances are also in flux, as you can imagine. And despite my best efforts, I got reelected.
Yeah, that's right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good.
Someone out there loves you.
Yeah, I know.
Any questions?
Either that or they don't like him,
Either or.
depending on how you look at that
Actually, I
one.
was talking to
Could be
your
punishment.
board chair at the CABE convention. I guess you're short one still.
Yes, we still are.
Yeah, so hopefully that'll get filled.
Everyone that ran was reelected.
Yeah, wow, yeah. Okay, any questions for George? No? Okay, that takes care of the special reports. This moves on to, we do not have a consent agenda this evening, and we move on to discussion action items. The first one up under Finance, Facilities, and Community is the Capital Regional Education Council, which is CREC, Special Education Audit Review for the East Line Public Schools. And Jeff, you want to?
Sure, yes. We have Peg McDonald and Lisa Fiano who are here from CREC, and Kim Davis is here as well. They've completed their audit, spent quite a bit of time in the district from the beginning of the year until now, and we turn it over to you. I know you've got a lot of information you want to share, so Peg, we'll start with you.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all. I think it was about 3 or 4 months that when I was here and we were talking about it. So time flies, and I'm glad that we were able to do this before the weather got really bad. So what I'd like to do is, I'm here with Lisa Fiano, who's also a member of the team. And so we'll spend about 20 minutes, 25 minutes just kind of going over the report, and then give you plenty of time to ask us any questions. And Lisa said she'd be happy to answer all the hard ones. Okay, so starting out, just a little background information. The review started in August and we ended in November. We were asked to answer 2 evaluation questions for you folks. The first one was really, are resources utilized effectively and efficiently to meet the needs of the special ed population? And the second eval question is, to what extent are the special ed students receiving educational benefit from the programs and services provided by East Line Public Schools? The methodology to answer those questions, we used a variety of different data sources. We interviewed 23 staff. I think we were able to interview almost all the building administrators, and then we also interviewed some related services and special ed staff and central office staff. We went into every school and spent a day in each school, and we did 29 classroom observations. We also reviewed 21 IEPs, and they were a representative random sample, so we got students from each of the different schools, different disability categories, different grade levels. And then we did 6 in-depth student reviews. So when we do that, we do an IEP review, and then we go and we actually observe that student in the classroom, talk to the staff a little bit about that student and get a little more information. We look at the student's work, and it gives us a much better in-depth look. And then we looked at all the state and local documents that we needed to be able to answer the questions. The evaluation team had 3 of us on it. My background is special ed teacher, actually paraprofessional, special ed teacher, and director of pupil services. Lisa's background is special ed teacher on a high school level. Also, she's our guru and expert on reading, and has her master's in 6th year in reading. Particularly specialized reading for students with disabilities. And then our 3rd member is Rhonda Merriman, and Rhonda's background is a speech and language therapist and also a director of pupil services. So the 3 of us were out in the schools and meeting a lot of staff, and during that time, we just really want to thank the staff. Kim and all of her staff have been just really wonderful to work with. You folks are really lucky. You've got some really good people, which I'm sure you know. We were impressed with the dedication and just the openness of saying, okay, this is a good opportunity to find out more how we can even get better. So we appreciate that. Just a little bit of information about the evaluation. I always say to people, this is a snapshot, not a video. We're going in and we're just there for 3 months. So we're taking a snapshot of what's happening in that 3 months. Sometimes we don't find out a lot about what happened prior to, and sometimes, obviously things change even in those 3 months. So it's not comprehensive and doesn't represent everything probably that you have done in the past and that you're going to be doing. One of the things we saw is the issues that we saw in East Lyme were nothing different than what we see in other districts. There was nothing like, oh my gosh, that's something new. All the districts are struggling with the same kinds of things that you folks are struggling with. So it's reassuring at least that your problems are similar to what other districts are dealing with. Kind of the intent of this for us, and I know for the leadership as we've talked, is to help build consensus around a shared understanding of what you're going to be doing in the future. With resources being difficult, and I appreciate the selectmen's discussion about the money, tough decisions have to be made. Special ed is no different than any other program. It requires funding to run well, but you have to always look at, are we using the resources in the most effective way? So this is really to help you folks prioritize what may be coming down the pike in the next 3 to 5 years that will help you decide where you want to put your resources. And I think really important here, and Lisa and I just feel really good about this, is the work is already underway. This was a 3-month review, but from the time that I met with Kim and we started going over some of our findings, Kim started saying, okay, we can do some of those things. So this is a case where some of the things I'm reporting on now, I know that Kim is going to be able to say to you, yeah, we've done that, we're moving on. And I think that does speak to the willingness of the leadership and the staff to continue to get better. And one of the things that we really noticed in East Lyme was that special education and the services and programs were really valued, and that's really important. So, okay, so our findings. Finding number 1, one of the things we look at is we look at your overall per pupil expenditure. So we're not just looking at special education, we're looking at how much you spend per pupil for all your students. The reason this is important is because later on we're going to look at the percent of the budget that's spent on special ed, and sometimes a district will have such a low budget, but then their numbers look okay in the percent that is being spent on special ed. That's not the case in East Lyme. You folks, and I'm on table 2 if you have the report. The DIRG average in 2016-17 was $16,185 per student, and East Lyme was $16,379. So you're right in the ballpark of what other towns and districts in your DIRG are spending. The reason why this is important is special ed. When we're looking at special ed, we're also looking at your general ed education, because most of the special ed students, probably 80% of your special ed students, spend 80% of the time in general education. And many of them are receiving, before they become special ed, receive services such as scientific research-based interventions, and that's really important. If those things don't happen, then your identification rate goes up and you have all kinds of other issues, which again, we did not see. So when we looked at, it's funny because it's very few things we can look at in terms of revenue coming in. But one of the things we did look at was your Medicaid revenues and your reimbursables. So students that receive special education services and 504 services, the district is eligible. If they meet the eligibility requirements for a Medicaid, then the district can go to the state and ask for those services to be reimbursed. And it used to be, when I was in South Windsor, I was the director, and I thought, oh, this is not going to be worth its while. But things have changed considerably, and the state has come up with a lot of new services that are now reimbursable. So, for example, you can get reimbursed for the transportation costs of a student if they're getting the therapy on whatever day they're getting the therapy. So if a child goes and gets occupational therapy 4 times a week, those 4 days you can get reimbursed for transportation costs. That's huge. That alone makes it worth considering. The other thing they've added is you can get reimbursed for behavior specialists. So I know that you have a BCBA. That person can be reimbursed through Medicaid, and that's new. The other thing that's new is used to be just special ed students, and now it's also students who qualify under 504. So at this point, we looked at your numbers and felt you probably are leaving about $50,000 a year on the table. Good news. I love giving good news. And that's actually a pretty easy fix. Part of it is really making sure you're getting reimbursed for all the services. The other piece of this is you cannot get reimbursement without parent consent. So I think we figured there were about 185 students that are special ed students, not even counting your 504 students, who are eligible for Medicaid reimbursement, but you only have permission from 35 parents of those 185. So
down to 70.
Yay! I was just going to say, Kim's been working on this. 70.
We're down to 70. Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And, a part of it is, and Kim is now, when students first get identified, then it's just part of it. When you have to go back, and then it's sort of, it doesn't impact parents' their own health, their child's health benefits at all. If you ask for a reimbursement, they can also still ask. But, everyone's worried about, health care. So that's great. And I think that you'll see a big change. So there'll be a little bit of extra money in your coffers. Okay. So the next thing we looked at was the percent of the budget that's spent on special education. So this slide really says, it looks like there's a huge difference. There is not. East Lyme is it spends 22.1% of the regular budget is special ed. This is in 16-17. The DIRG average is 22.6, and the state is 23. So, and we looked way back as far as, we went back, and consistently you've been in line with what the DIRG spends and what the state spends. A little bit lower, but, this isn't a bad place for you to be. Then we looked at what the percent of increase was from 2014 to 2017, and your rate of increase is about 9%. The DIRG's rate is about, 0.9%. Yeah. Woo, that gave you a heart attack. Huh? At least I got you woke. You're all awake now. Yeah. The DIRG increases 0.5, and the state is 0.8. So again, everyone is increasing. Yours is not drastically more or less than what everyone else seems to be doing. Okay. Then, what I would take from that is you're spending what you probably should be to be running a good special ed program. What I'm going to be talking to you about is how you're allocating what you're spending and ways that you can be a little more efficient in terms of, and get better educational impact for the way what you're spending. All right, so table 5, this is the budget categories, and this is where it gets sort of interesting. So we looked at your budget from 2015 to 2017. It was really a minor, like $73,000 increase, which that's not bad. And then we looked at where are you spending your money, and what's increasing and what isn't increasing. So the things that are increasing are your certified staff. This is not a surprise. You, like any other district, you have contract obligations, so we tend to see certified staff increase. A decrease. The other thing that has decreased is your tuition and your property services. Oh, wait a minute here, I'm so off. You're increasing in your certified staff, not tuition. Well, I guess it did go up 1 year, but your tuition is really low, and your property services went up a little bit. That's kind of almost offset by your decreases in this 1 year in non-certified staff, instructional supplies, and purchase services. So then we looked at kind of where the trend is, and up until last year, you've had kind of a steady increase in your non-certified. So since 2010, your non-certified staff have been increasing. While that's been happening, your tuition for out of district has been decreasing. So it would make sense that there's a connection here. You're keeping more students in the district, and that's at a cost of you need additional staff. And I'd always say to people, if you can keep them in district, that's where they should be. That's their home school or their home district. It's in spirit of what the law is asking us, least restrictive environment. So I think that's good that that's been a focus. So I think we talked a little bit about this. Yeah. So the next slide is the table 6. And we tried to compare your different budget codes with some of the districts in your DIRG and the state average. Now, one of the problems with that is comparative data is 2015. So I can tell you already that although most of your budget items stayed about the same, the one that didn't is your non-certified staff. So you're still going to be a little bit higher than they are, but not as significantly as what we saw. So if you take your non-certified in 2015-16 compared to the district average, the state average, you were about 8% higher than the district average, and you were 11% higher than the state average. Now, you've reduced some of those numbers, but my guess is you're still higher than the DIRG and the state average. Your tuition, however, you were 9.9% of your budget in 2015 was spent on tuition. The districts was, you were less, 8.4% less than the district average and 12% less than the state average. So again, you can kind of see the connection between the two. Everything else was pretty much the same comparatively to the districts in the state. Sure. Yeah, I thought that was interesting myself. I don't know. It might be that you are sending your folks further, you know? We just did one over in Bristol, and it was the same thing. The transportation just didn't seem to be in line with the tuition. But then I found out what they needed to do to get their kids over to some of these outer districts, and they were a long way away. So it could be that you're sending them quite a ways. I gave you the list, I think.
There's a mix.
Yeah.
Having 45 minutes is pretty typical.
Yeah.
But we do have a couple of students in the same place, so that, you know, reduces our costs a little bit because they go in one. Yeah.
Could
And
be.
we do use first student, if we can, to the closer locations, and only use Curtin for far away and things that have to be, you know, counted.
Okay, so then the next thing we took a look at was your staff ratio. And what I was really curious about was what your staff ratio was compared to other districts and that district average. So I'm on tables 8 and 9 now, and in my chart you'll see under East Lyme in the PowerPoint, you'll see a 9.6 and a slash, and then you'll see a 12.7. So the figures on the left-hand side are for 2015-16. And the figure on the right-hand side is for 2017. So unfortunately, we can't get comparative data with the districts. I can only compare 2015. But this at least gives you an idea of, you know, it has changed a little bit. So now your certified staff, in 2015, you had one certified teacher to every 9.6 special ed students. The district average was 10.9. So you were doing pretty good. In 2017, you have 12.7 students for every certified teacher. And so I'm going to kind of go on a little bit of a limb and say I think the district average has probably increased a little bit. I think you're pretty much right in the ballpark with your certified staff. That's your special ed teachers. Then we looked at your psychologists, social workers. Now, because you contract services with your social workers, they're not included. And so I think there's 1.5 of them that aren't in here. But in 2015, your ratio was 24.4 special ed students to every psychologist, counselor, social worker. This year, it's 31 students to every one of these staff. The district average is 22. So you're getting up there where your numbers are a little bit higher than the district average. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. because we also think that you're a little shy on psychologists, specialist people like psychologists, social workers, consulting psychiatrists, particularly because you're keeping kids that are more involved in your school district. When you do that, you know, you need more specialists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, because these are students with both emotional kinds of problems, cognitive, and physical kinds of problems. So that seems a little bit, your ratio seems a little too high for us on that, and it appears to be getting a little bit higher. Now, let's go to your non-certified staff. Yes. I'm sorry. Oh, yes, there's 1.5, is it 1.5 social workers that are contracted?
Yes.
Yeah.
Currently,
So,
that's how many we have.
yeah, so what happens is when we're comparing, we're comparing with this form that all the districts send in, it's called ED001. And those staff would be considered under consulting services, so they wouldn't show up in this chart. So you got 1.5 more.
Right, which is statistically relevant in doing a ratio
Right.
like this. It's going to move the end because the denominator is relatively low
Right.
for this, right? So that's good. But I don't know what the other, so is that a common for most districts to do this type of?
No,
is it
not
helpful?
usually. Most districts have their own social workers. Although, and again, this category, they lump 3 things in together: social workers, guidance counselors, and psychologists. So it's also, the guidance counselors are kind of a wild card here, because some districts have guidance counselors in the elementary schools, others don't. So, but I will say that we looked at your psych numbers and your social work numbers, and we think they're a little low for what they need to do. Yeah.
Even with the 1.5, you look at
Yeah.
total assessment.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Then the other category we looked at is your non-certified staff. And remember, this represents about 1/4 of your special ed budget. So it's a pretty significant chunk of money. So in 2015, the ratio was for every non-certified staff, and that's your instructional aides and your teaching assistants, you had one of them to 3.6 special ed students. That's pretty outstanding. I've never seen that before. That's a lot of attention. It has changed because, again, we showed that there was last year where you had a decrease. So now it's for every 4.9 special ed students, you have 1 non-certified staff. That's still really a low ratio. The district average in 2015 was about 5.8. So I would take a guess to say that you still are comparably higher, or your ratio is lower than the district average would be if I were to try and dig up the 2017 numbers. Bottom line, you've got, I think, a lot, and when we observed, we said, there's a lot of non-certified staff. Yes? Yeah, I don't know. Again, it's however they filled out that ED001 form, so I didn't use them in my calculation of average. I'm sure they have them. Yes. One possibility is that they use they're non-certified or contracted, then they wouldn't show up. So, yeah. But because their numbers were kind of good to look at in the other ones, I kept them in. Yes?
The East Lyme kind of strategy is that we have more of the special ed students stay
district. So is that the driver? Because then we're not necessarily comparing apples to apples, because they're not, we have staff in our denominator that they don't have in their staff. So is that what's happened? So you're saying we have too many, or, sorry, that's too strong a word. We have more than others, but there's a reason we have more than others, because we have more students here. So, okay.
So, yes.
Or more students, or we have
More
students
involved.
that need more attention here.
Here, yes.
Than
other districts.
Yeah,
Yes.
so when you look at it, it's about, so when you look at the difference in the tuition, it's like.
Right.
Right.
It's like,
So, yes, exactly. So you're getting exactly what I'm saying. In some ways, financially, it's a wash.
It is a
But let us talk to you about what we think is best practice, because that's a little different. So if you were to, I think Jeffrey and I did this, if you were to say, okay, if you brought your average up of kids getting placed out of district, how much would that cost? Probably about $1 million. If you brought your non-certified down, how much would you gain? Probably about $1 million. So it is, in fact, a wash. The problem that we're having is we think that you need certified people, more certified people instead of non-certified, to be able to really have an impact on educational benefit. So what we love is the fact that you folks are keeping these kids here. But it appears to me that over the years, the solution has been, if we're going to keep the kids here, then we're going to hire more non-certified staff. Our observations has been that you have a lot of non-certified staff, and sometimes that interferes with a kid's ability to be independent. And sometimes the non-certified staff doesn't understand how to do specially designed instruction because they're not certified to do it. The difference between what a para or even a tutor, someone even that has a bachelor's degree, they're supporting that child versus helping that child to be independent by giving them strategies. A special ed teacher, a speech and language therapist, social worker, they understand and know how to do that because they're trained in that. Did we see a lot of good support with your non-certified staff? Absolutely. But we're really asking you to rethink that paradigm a little bit, and instead of continuing to do non-certified staff, when sometimes there were three adults with 2 children when we were observing, it might be better to spend your money with someone who got the training and could do the specially designed instruction.
Sorry, can I?
Sure. Yeah.
So my impression, and again, I'm still learning some of this, my impression of our decision to do more, keep more students in-house, is that it was more efficient and more effective. It was actually a little cheaper, and we actually had better benefit for the students. But I'm hearing.
It's also the law. In other words.
Well, we could place
Least restrictive
people.
environment.
We don't have to keep them in, we don't have to keep students in district. We can, other towns have students out of, and I'm probably not using all the right terminology, and I apologize.
No, that's fine. But, but I just want to make a point to this. The law says very specifically that districts are supposed to offer the least restrictive environment first. So it starts with the student needs to be in the general ed class if he can do that with supports and services. So in some ways, you guys are doing a really good job on the least restrictive.
But we have more students who stay in district rather than, I don't know what the terminology is, to bring them out of district.
That are outplaced.
Yes. So I thought that strategy was, it was actually cost effective, but it was also effective that we actually provided a better benefit to the students. What I'm hearing from your analysis is you're actually disagreeing on both fronts, that it's about equal cost and we're less effective.
I don't know if you're less effective than if they were placed out of district. I think that you're not getting the biggest bang for your buck. Emerald, the cook, when he bams something. And I just think that you could be getting better educational impact. It's not that you're not getting good educational impact. You could be getting better with the money that you're spending if you were to have more certified staff. It's just a different way to think about it. Doug Reeves, he's an educational kind of guru, and he says you want to make sure you have the right people on the bus. And I think that the strategy of hiring non-certified worked pretty well for a while, but I think that there'll be some diminishing returns here. Yes.
But,
yeah.
say, but I'm a little confused by that, because if you look at Table 5, we're also spending over $1 million more on certified personnel in 16-17 than we did in 2010. So since we brought kids back in district, we also, in addition to having more non-certified personnel, we also have more certified personnel.
Yes. Yeah, so it might be more, it might not be cost of, it might cost you more. It's hard to tell.
I don't want to muddy the waters too much, but I don't think it's always a distinction about the kids that you brought back. Because, for example, in one of the classes that I observed at the high school, there was a paraprofessional in the class, and her role solely was to take notes while the teacher lectured. So you are paying for that person's salary to take notes when you could provide kids with training in different assistive technologies that would allow them to take the notes on their own and would have a bigger impact in terms of their overall independence as learners and their long-term ability to be in control of their own ability to take in information, rather than having someone who was simply just sitting in the classroom copying notes. So I think that's an example. And that class was not a class of kids that would have likely have been outplaced. They were kids who had learning disabilities and maybe some cognitive disabilities. So I think that's an example. The kids that you are keeping in with the more significant disabilities probably do need some additional adult support. But you've probably got lots of non-certified staff who are providing services that could be, the money for that could be better spent elsewhere.
Thanks, Lisa. And this might come a little bit more clear as we talk about the ed benefit. Right now, I'm just talking about the resources. Okay, so then the next thing we looked at, because one of the things that can drive up costs more than anything is the identification rate. So on Table 12, we looked at identification rate for 2016-17. East Lyme's identification rate was 13.5. The DIRG average was 13.2, and the state average is 13.9. And this, we looked over a period of time, and you folks have been consistently right where you probably should be in terms of identifying. So that's good news. Then we looked at the kinds of, the disability categories, and we saw a couple of areas that are increasing kind of slowly. One that increased pretty quickly over the last year, and that's other health impaired. This seems to be happening a lot with other districts as well. Under other health impaired are kids with attention deficit disorder. And particularly, probably if we looked at this, there'd be a lot of them in the high school, but it's a disability category that is really not well defined, and it's kind of hard to get a handle on. So this is not unusual, but it's worth watching. The other areas that are increasing slightly are speech and language and learning disabilities. And I think the speech and language, one of the issues is because we saw that your speech and language people are mostly doing pull-out. Kids are getting pulled out of the class to get their services. When that happens sometimes, then the only way that teachers can feel they're getting help for their students is if they get them identified. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit more in terms of push-in model rather than a pull-out model, and I think those numbers, we might see a change.
Okay. Is anxiety or depression or the ability or the concern about are those labeled disabilities?
So there is one category that some of those conditions can fall under. Is called emotional disturbance.
Emotional disturbance, okay.
Yeah.
Is that on here?
Yes. Yeah, ED.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, it's that has gone down, you know, it's not going up. But yeah, which is good.
Or it's hidden.
Or it's not,
Or it's
yeah.
not.
Yeah, we just don't know about it.
It also sometimes can be in other health.
Okay, yeah.
Which makes sense.
ED, only 6, let's see.
The drug abuse or substance abuse, it's not really in any of these categories unless it's there's an emotional issue and it significantly affects educational performance.
Yeah.
Those students might be under 504 or just might be seeing a guidance counselor or a social worker. Okay.
How do you classify if students have multiple?
Yeah, then, yeah, usually then they consider the primary disability. The PPT says what's the primary and what's the secondary, and that's how they usually do that.
So this shows the primary?
Mm-hmm.
State doesn't ask us to collect that secondary data, so this gets reported on the front of the document.
So to Tim's point, it could be actually somewhere else in the data as well. That could be, okay.
So here's the other thing we decided to look at, because we kept hearing non-certified staff talk about, and other staff talk about 504 students and how many there were, and so we got kind of curious about that. Now, 504 students, the difference between special ed and 504 is 504 students, the threshold isn't as high, and they're not covered under Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. They're covered under Section 504, which basically is an anti-discrimination act. You can't discriminate against somebody based on their handicap. 504 students don't get an IEP, they get an accommodation plan. And 504 is all about access. It's not saying that the student has to be in the most appropriate program like they were if they were a special ed student. Special ed students have to, the district is obligated to provide them an appropriate program. With 504, the district is responsible to make sure that they have access to an educational program. So, and 504 also covers any of us who work for an agency that gets federal funds. So we looked at your 504 numbers, and the district in total has a 7.7% identification rate of 504 students. The national average, and it's really hard to get statistics on this, but the national average tends to be between 0.4% to 4.8%. So then we said, well, wait a minute, we think this is a little too high. What's going on? So in this slide, you'll see we looked at it by school, and Kim was nice enough to get us all these stats. Your elementaries are pretty much in the ballpark. They're kind of on the high end of the national average, but pretty much in the 4%. You get into middle school and it's 7.3%, but then you get to high school and the identification rate is 11.5, almost as high as the special ed identification rate. So this is an area that we're going to be recommending you look at, because these students do take resources. And they might even be taking some of the special ed resources. So a non-certified staff member might be working with some 504 students, in fact, and I know your related services like speech and language, OTPT, they have 504 students on their caseloads. So when we're looking at caseloads and when you're looking at the ratio, you know, I would say this number is very high.
Hey, can I ask you?
Yes.
You didn't look at the healthcare plans, did you?
No.
You know, sometimes you go back and forth between the student being on a healthcare plan
Yeah.
versus, you know, 504. Okay. I didn't know if our healthcare plans were significantly lower than the average of other.
It's a good question. I mean,
districts.
I don't know, and that would really, I think you want to look at, you know, our recommendation is take a look at that student population, particularly in the middle school and high school, and see what is the plan for these kids, what is the problem, the handicapping condition. If these students really have a big problem, then they should be protected under IDA and be considered special ed. Or maybe they don't have a problem at all, or a minor problem. One of the things Lisa and I were talking about earlier, and I think Kim and I talked about it too, at the high school, one of the accommodations is to take an untimed SAT test. And if your child is identified as 504, you can ask for that accommodation. Now, I don't know if that's what's going on. I think you guys, I know that in my district, that was happening. Yes.
We're leaving out Salem. Are we only looking at high school students that live in East Lyme for that 11%? Or are we looking at all of them?
No, anybody who attends the high school, so that would include the
So
Salem students.
that jump may not really be that significant if a good percentage of the students that are identified are coming from Salem, in which case our average, now, that would mean that the group from Salem was way above the national average, but we're not looking at all the data is my point.
Well, I mean, Salem students are serviced by our teachers, so I just tend to
I
consider
understand
them
that, but
our
when we
kids,
look at
so-
the change from our elementary schools to our high school, we're looking at a huge jump, but we're not, I don't know what, what the Salem elementary schools are coming in at for an average right now. Maybe they're at 15%.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Who's identifying them? Are you guys identifying them,
I
or?
would beg to say that they're at where other elementary schools are.
I'm just curious if something is.
And your middle school trend is up.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. So it would be interesting to see, or maybe it's in here, is the 504 data for other schools that are in our dirt.
It is not in there. We just didn't have time
Especially
to
if they're
grab
really
it, but,
super competitive ones.
yeah. I think I can tell you, because we do a lot of these, this is high. This is
Is the
high.
trend similar that in elementary school, so for most districts, the trend is similar?
Yes.
It goes much higher in middle school than higher for high school.
It's all about
It's just our
this,
starting point is high,
yeah.
right? Where even our elementary schools, you can say it's in the range, but it's the high end of the range. And then we blow through the range. I can tell you, in Old Lyme, I don't know the whole school number, but just knowing my classes, I would say my classes are easily in the 11%. The students that I teach in my classes
That
are
are 504
easily,
identified.
yes, easy. Now, I might have a disproportionate of number in my area, but
Well, and keep in mind too, this can ebb and flow, because you could put a student on a 504 plan if they break their leg
That's right.
of some sort. So they might go on for a period of time, and then they could
Yes,
come off.
that's right.
Is there a breakdown of what are the types of things that are?
Yeah, we're recommending that. It's kind of beyond the scope of this study, but we are definitely recommending that you guys take a look at it. It might be nothing, it might be something, but it goes to, there's utilization of resources here. And maybe it's not enough to warrant an issue with your related services, but we're a little worried about your related services. OT, PT, speech language, school psychologists, social workers. I don't know how many of these kids are involved, they're involved with those, and I think that would really be worth looking at. Okay.
Barbara has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So when you're talking about utilization of related services for the 504 kids, are you including the paras?
No.
Okay, so that was what I was confused about when you first said it.
I do
So
think it's
when
worth
you're
looking
saying
at.
related services, you're talking about
OTPT, speech
OTPT.
language. Yeah.
Right. And is it uncommon for 504 students to have those kind of services in their accommodation plans? I've always thought not.
Well, some districts say if you, OT and PT is only for kids that qualify for special ed. We don't have a legal obligation to do OT, PT if they're not qualified for special ed. Other districts say, no, this is a child that needs some help, we're
Okay.
going to help them. So every district's a little bit different on that. Was something else about this.
At the rate, okay. Wow. So 20% of our kids have issues.
Well, if you define 504, you know,
If you
it's-
say 504 plus those that are
that are receiving, they're receiving some sort of intervention or
sped.
service.
Yeah.
20%.
That's a lot.
Is that more?
I would say.
13 get special ed.
Yeah.
Idea. 7%, 7.7, almost 8% get.
You're right.
13 is pretty normal.
Yeah, we're in the average.
Your
Yeah,
504
we're in the average of the
is
special ed, but the
in those
504 is
schools, it's up. You know, and again, definitely worth just finding out what's going on there. Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot.
So that kind of concludes the resource question. Overall, we think you're spending the right amount of money. We think there's some money that you can get from Medicaid. We think you probably shouldn't reduce what you're spending, but probably spend it differently, looking at staffing patterns and also maybe things like what Lisa talked about, things like using technology. You know, technology and assistive tech has gotten to be so wonderful that, you know, you don't necessarily need to have a person sitting all day taking notes. There's other ways that these things can get done now. So I'll end there and turn it over to Lisa to talk about educational benefit.
So I'm going to be summarizing pages 23 about to page 25 in the report. So when we take a look at educational benefit, what we do is we take a look at a bunch of IEPs, and we looked at 21 different IEPs across the district. And like Peg said at the beginning of the presentation, we looked at a representative sample, the random, but we made sure that we looked at all different grades and different disability categories. So overall, from the 21 IEPs that we looked at, using the rubric that we used from the Special Education Resource Center, the IEPs scored in the emerging range. And when the IEPs score in the emerging range, what it says is that while the IEP identifies what the student's concerns are, there isn't a really tight, clear connection between the student's special education program and their general education program. And there isn't a good description of what the specially designed instruction looks like and how that program is being put together and implemented. And that was pretty consistent throughout our analysis of the IEPs. A couple of things that really stood out were how the present level of academic achievement and functional performance is constructed. So that page of the IEP is supposed to be a holistic view of where the student is currently performing. So we should see data from a variety of sources that talks about the student's current abilities and compares it to what other students in the same grade would be doing.
and then clearly identifies those areas that require specially designed instruction. And so we saw that that alignment between the data was not good because there was not often a good representative sample of data, and that data didn't compare where the student was currently performing to peers. And then when the identified need was established, it didn't specify where that concern really affected the student's ability to make progress and participate in the general education setting. So if that page is not well constructed, what happens is it makes it very difficult to write IEP goals and objectives that are measurable. And that was a concern that we found across the district, that the IEP goals and objectives were not measurable. And they did not specifically name what the specially designed instruction was going to look like. So based on the skill, what was it that the special ed teacher was going to do that was going to address the unique needs of the student based on their disability? And then finally, the other concern was that we were going to, I think we're a few slides ahead here. There we are. I think one, yeah, there we go. And then finally, with the accommodations and modifications, there was a lack of specificity about how those accommodations were going to be used, where and when, and what the supports were required that the teachers were going to need to be able to implement those accommodations and modifications. Because what we want to do when we give students accommodations and modifications is we want to make plans to fade those back and address the needs with that using our specially designed instruction. And so these are things that are fairly common. We see this quite a bit when we do special education program reviews. The good news is that this is something that's fairly easy to address and improve. So I think that in our recommendations, Peg will talk more about that. And then if we can skip ahead to the commendations. I want to thank everybody that I came in contact with as part of this review, and I think Peg would say that. Everybody was incredibly helpful. The information that they shared with us was very valuable in order for us to be able to put together our report. And in terms of the people that I had contact with, you have some incredibly knowledgeable, well-trained staff working in the district, and the hope is to kind of spread their knowledge. And all of the staff, I've also been doing some structured literacy training with special ed teachers in the district. I meet with them once a month, and they have just been a phenomenal group to work with. They're very, very invested in making the most of the training and really helpful to me in terms of understanding what's happening in each of their buildings so that we can optimize that. And when I was looking at the information about the specially designed instruction that's available at the different levels, it's really nice to see how the special ed staff and the general ed staff are working together, because in many of the buildings, it's not in isolation. You have some really highly trained folks in general ed who are working with special ed students to provide some very targeted interventions, and you also have some highly trained folks in your special ed staff. And so now our goal with the training that we're doing is to make sure you have a greater training across the district in those areas. So I think what you've done also in terms of keeping students in district is very commendable. I saw a program at the high school for students with some pretty significant behavioral challenges, and the teacher is doing a great job with that classroom to make it successful for those students. So you have a lot of really great things going on. Your kids are doing well on their state testing, and I think you have a lot of great starting points to build on and grow in terms of anything that we are going to make recommendations on.
So I guess think that brings us to recommendations, and then we'll give you plenty of time to ask us any questions. So the recommendations, we did develop it in a 3-year strategic plan with goals, 2 goals. A couple of suggestions on the strategic plan. It should be integrated into the district plans. It should be part of the staff evaluations and goal setting. It needs to be pretty much regularly monitored and adjusted as you continue to work on things. It needs to include all stakeholder involvement and support. And the 2 goals we came up with, the first one is around enhancing educational impact and continuum of services. So one of the things we saw in the elementary school was almost all the services are pull out. Even if it's a student with a learning disability, they get pulled out of the general ed classroom and are given the instruction either by the instructional aide, teacher assistant, or the special ed teacher, speech and language therapist. And we're really recommending you do more push in. We just, what would help is co-teaching, if staff can get in and do co-teaching. But the idea is you want students to get the specially designed instruction right there where they need it. If they have to wait an hour to get pulled out, then it's not going to have the impact. So most of what we're talking about with educational benefit is you need a greater impact. You're doing a lot of the right things, but the service model in the elementary schools, and many of the staff said, I'd love to be in the classroom. It's hard to do it, especially the related services staff. So, you do have a really nice model in your middle school of co-teaching. In fact, your special ed students in the middle schools, special ed teachers in the middle school spend 80% of their time in the general ed classrooms. Whereas in the elementary, your special ed teachers spend hardly any time in the general ed. So I think it's also kind of a difficult model for a student to suddenly go from pull out to push in, and so I think there just needs to be some consistency. And Lisa, you felt in the high school as well?
Yeah, I think at the high school it would be really important to look at the whole continuum of services to make sure that kids are getting a good combination of both. In talking to the teachers and doing my observations at the high school, you may have one teacher who's trained to provide very specialized reading instruction, but all of the special ed teachers are expected to do it without the training, and they're doing it in their resource rooms instead of a targeted reading class. And in your co-taught classes, there's only a couple of co-taught classes, and those co-taught classes at the high school actually are really just special ed classes. So the whole continuum of service at the high school really needs to be looked at closely to make sure that there's a good combination of all of those services for every kid, so that your ratios in your gen ed classrooms accurately reflect what the population at large looks like. Don't have a class that's considered general ed, but is only populated by kids who have IEPs.
The other thing we're recommending is some training with your staff on what it's called the University of Kansas strategies. These are research-based strategies that you can teach students so that they then can do it themselves, so that we move away from that I'm here to support you versus I'm here to give you some strategy so next time this issue comes up and I'm not here, you're going to be able to learn to do it. And I know Kim already has all the information on it, and she's on top of it. So that is all around the service delivery model. The other thing we're recommending is some training. Your teaching assistants and instructional assistants really need some training on this idea of not supporting, but providing specially designed instruction. Universal design for learning. Lisa, did you want to just mention that?
So Universal Design for Learning is a tool that was named by the writers of the Common Core State Standards as being necessary for all kids to be successful, but especially kids who have IEPs to be successful with these more rigorous standards. And what Universal Design for Learning does is it takes a look at the curriculum and minimizes any unintended barriers that exist in the curriculum. And if you are using Universal Design for Learning, I think what you're going to find is more kids with IEPs can be successful with fewer additional supports. So you might find it's a tool that helps you decrease the need for some of those non-certified staff in general education classrooms. Allows kids to actually meet the standards with fewer modifications and less specially designed instruction.
And then the other recommendation for training is training the staff to write IEPs and then monitoring it. I just want to give a little example of one of the IEPs I looked at, which kind of, I think, explains a little bit. So this student was identified as having attention deficit disorder, and they said things like, oh my goodness, you know, he's not focused, he doesn't pay attention. They used mostly standardized tests to determine that and didn't have a lot of other information. But then when you went to look at the goals, they were improve math and improve reading. There was nothing about that student's attention and focus and executive functioning skills. So that's a pretty good example of if you can't, you need to explicitly teach that issue of being focused. And this was a middle school student, and if he doesn't get it in middle school, and he doesn't get it in high school, and he graduates, and he still doesn't have a skill of being able to self-monitor, then, you know, we haven't done what we need to with them. So that's just one sort of example of that. So again, Lisa said this can be trained, and it can. Teachers can learn to do this, and it's a different mindset. It's not just about their academics, it's about them as a total person and what they're going to need to be successful in life. Now, it is interesting because when I went into some of the classrooms, I saw teachers teaching strategies. They just didn't put it in the IEP. But if you're not putting it in the IEP and you're not monitoring it, then it can get lost.
We move on to goal 2, Peg. We gotta.
Pardon me?
We'll just move on to goal 2 there. We've got.
Oh, sure.
We're running
Okay.
a little over on time.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. Okay, so goal 2 is just about maximizing your utilization of resources. We suggest you do a study on staff time usage. Find out how much time the special ed staff and related services staff are working with special ed kids, how much time is in your SRBI process, and how much time is with 504 students. And then we are recommending, and we bolded that, you really want to revise your staffing patterns and start looking maybe through attrition when the TA or instructional assistant leaves. What are some of the other ways that you can support the population, either through like a consulting psychiatrist or another BCBA or technology? We're also recommending that you think about quotas and SLPAs, that should say SLPAs on the slide, using them to help continue service delivery when these certified staff have to go to PPT meetings or other things. Your job descriptions of your TAs and your IAs, it's a little confusing, and you know, it's an interesting model. I haven't seen quite so many of these non-certified, and you just might want to look at the job description of both of them and really decide what is it that you need for the students you have, and then, you know, make some decisions based on that. And then we're also recommending right now the special ed supervision, particularly of the district-wide programs. The staff in those is the central office, and we really think that we'd like to see the building principals be involved both in the supervision of those staff and also in the PPT meetings for those district-wide programs. Want to take a look at your department chairs in the middle school and high school and see how they can support this, this plan. And then the coordination of the 504 services right now is the Director of Student Services. We're recommending that it not be the Director of Student Services. Typically, you know, it's not a special ed program, and I think it does confuse things when the Director of Student Services is also the coordinator of 504. So we're recommending you look at someone else in central office to do the coordination. Our second one is just taking a look at the PPT days in the schools and trying to arrange them when the related services staff are there. Your related services staff are kind of trying, many of them are trying to get from one building to another, so some wasted time if they have to go back to a building for a PPT when they're not assigned. And also your new staff members, we recommend an onboarding program so they can learn things like what do they do when they go in and do an observation of a student, and just kind of for a year or two really kind of give them all the skills that they need to be successful. It's a tough job. In terms of materials, we're recommending that testing materials will be in each school and that additional structured language materials be available. And in terms of processes, we're obviously talking to you about the Medicaid and seeing if you can maximize the reimbursements and also analyzing your 504 students. And that is it. So do you have questions for us?
Questions?
I just have one quick
Barbara?
one.
Yeah.
Is, like at the elementary level and the high school level, where kids are obviously in regular ed classes and then they're coming out, does your study take a look at the amount of time provided for the special ed teacher to confer with the regular ed teacher so that the regular ed teacher knows what's going on and they can work together on the goals? Did you take a look at that, or you didn't look at that?
Yeah, and I can, yeah, do you want to speak to the high school?
I know at the high school, the teachers felt like they did have opportunities to consult with one another, so that didn't seem to be a big concern. It seemed to be more of an issue in terms of what did the overall continuum of services look like, so that students were getting the right combination of opportunities to work in a small group setting on very targeted instruction, and then have some embedded specially designed instruction in a setting in addition to collaborate with the general.
What about at the elementary level?
I can speak to that. I think at the elementary school level, the problem is those special ed teachers are never in the general ed classroom, so they're spending so much time in pullout. It's hard for them to hook up with the general ed teacher. So I think co-teaching, if you put that model into effect, it would, and gave them some co-planning time together, that would make a big difference. Yeah, you've really got two systems at the elementary school. You have general ed here and you have special ed here.
Okay.
And they're not having opportunities to meet. At the middle school, they meet, the special ed teachers each is assigned to a team and they meet with that team. The only problem with that is it's sort of a general discussion once a week. And if they're co-teaching, sometimes they need more time.
Got it. Thank you.
Any questions? A lot of information. I must say, I was a very, very good presentation. I mean, I think I certainly brought some attention to some things, but in a very positive, constructive way. I was quite impressed with it. I guess I look forward to hearing from Jeff and Kim and Amy, or however, what you guys now will see as the game plan and going forward. And I think this is an awful lot of information.
Yeah, we have to prioritize now, I think.
Yeah,
and as
absolutely.
Peg said, Kim has already started. putting some components in
And
place.
so this is hot off the presses
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
terms
that's it.
of, you know, how much time we've had it in our hands. So I haven't met with the administrative team yet. I
Yep.
haven't met with any of our special educators and support staff yet. So what we'll be doing is sort of digesting this. Obviously, I'm working right on my budget spreadsheet before I came over here for Mariana. So, you know, thinking about what we can prioritize to do first, you know, and lay that out, but absolutely confirm some things we know we need to work on and gave us new perspectives to look at some of the other things in the district. So looking forward to getting into some really good work for kids.
Yeah, and I think the timeline is
Yeah.
talking about in the next 3 years.
Yeah, in the
So
next
what-
3 years, right. I
what
think
we're
we
gonna
can
be
tie a
looking
lot
at,
of the
doing
things
sooner
we
than later.
heard, tie right into the long-range plan of Goal 3 in terms of, you know, individualized person-centered learning, you know, so that we're focusing on that, and which, you know, supports social and emotional growth. And we'll have other tie-ins as well, but, yeah, a lot of good work. So thank you for your attention, and thank you to Peg and Lisa and Rhonda, who couldn't be here tonight, but they were a pleasure to work with, and our teams really enjoyed talking with them and being asked those questions. You know, it really shows that as a district, we're valuing, you know, the support services by looking into it and hearing their voice in the conversation. So, thank
Good,
you.
very good,
Thank you.
excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy, Lisa. Appreciate it very much.
And happy Thanksgiving.
Our pleasure.
Safe travels home.
Thank you.
Okay, onward to East Lyme Public Schools Food Service Program update. And I see Chris has been patiently waiting here
Is
to
here,
to
yes.
do his thing.
I appreciate it because I usually go after like some kid that's like doing a performance or a cute little play or something, so it's better follow something like that than kids and animals, right? And they steal your thunder and we gave you the financial sheets that me and Mariana went through. We can briefly talk about those if you'd like first, and then we can get into the fun stuff with the some of the events and things that we've been doing in the lunch program.
Everybody's a copy of that breakdown.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, we're sorry that we lost 2 days. It was unfortunate with that storm, so that was an additional, you know, $6,300 of revenue that was lost. But, you know, our sales are, you know, are up. And, you know, Chris is on a promotion.
May I ask a
so-
question?
Yeah, yeah,
Already?
go ahead.
I'm not sure what your line of catering mean. Are you, the school is now in the catering business, or?
Well, it's just events that we had done through, and I'll speak to it when we're in the PowerPoint
Okay,
presentation,
okay.
where we're doing events for the football boosters and other groups inside the school that we're providing food services for before they used to go out of the school to do those type of things.
Got it, okay, that's what I thought it was. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do you want to talk through these, or are we just asking questions?
That was me, I'm
Financial.
sorry.
We can talk through it a little bit, and then if there's any questions. For general sales, we looked at some of Chartwell's invoices and stuff from last year, and it's kind of hard to determine where they were getting some of their revenue numbers from. So we kind of had to use that baseline of what their sales were. Our sales were very broken up because we knew exactly where we were getting the revenue from. As you saw, it was $124,000 for sales. We had an additional $6,100 for catering for October. Then our state reimbursements of $65,000. For year-to-date comparison between the contract company and us, we were $3,000 under their revenue for last year with 2 days lost. So if we had those extra 2 days, our revenue obviously would have been higher from those days lost to the power outages.
So what's the special income and other
Just
income
gonna say.
that they had? Because it's $30,000, so
We've been trying to figure out what their special income and other income.
Yeah, and like I said, we've looked at the bills and
Is any of it payback from that woman who stole?
I don't know that would, I don't know. There isn't a detail. The only thing I could think of is perhaps some of it can be their catering, you know, where they did some in-service.
Did a few things, yeah.
A few things, but honestly.
That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
They must have charged an arm and a leg.
It's kind of hard to tell what those levels were. We really had the end number that we could compare to, and
Right, so that's, yeah, so I
and that's
pulled
what we
those
did.
out.
Yeah.
I pulled those out from the sales number, from strictly the sales number, just because I have no idea what those are, and there's no explanation.
And that's from the Chartwell's books?
Correct. From the information I had.
And then, so state reimbursement went up. Is there a chance that some of the other income was actually state reimbursement or something like that?
That's actually from our sales. So if you look in our spreadsheet, our reimbursements are higher because our sales are higher through daily.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Got it.
Got it, got it.
Then if you go down to our expenses, our payroll is down significantly. And then they had their other charges, their semi-variable charges, which were kind of hard to discern what those were also, and their management fee. And you'll see that we actually put more money into food and supplies, getting higher quality items, new fresh products from local farms, so we spent a little bit more money and put it back into the program, and I think that's what generated the higher sales from the students. And then if you look at their end numbers, they were 36,000 in the red, and we're at 5,900 in the red year-to-date right now. And I really believe if we had those 2 days, we probably would have ended up in the black for October. So going forward, our goal is to rev up the revenue and get us into that black area that we want to be in.
The first few months are always
It is.
tougher ones
September's,
anyways, right?
you're always
Got
dealing with
upfront
the new
costs.
lunchbox phenomenon. And you're also getting the students changing their culture of what they were used to.
The old lunch versus the new lunch.
What we're trying to push.
Are we still pushing with the athletic department, the dinners to go and stuff for the bus rides?
Yep, we've been doing, we did football this whole season.
Good.
We already have lacrosse lined up for the spring, and,
Wow.
And how are we doing that? Like, are we having the kids fill out a form and it's like $5 a dinner, or?
it actually goes through their, it's the parents that generally send it.
Right.
Like the football, it was the boosters. I talked to the lacrosse coach, he's gonna be dealing with the parents, so
So they're paying for it?
they pay for it.
Yeah, but I'm guessing, is it like $5 like a dinner? I don't know
Yeah,
what
we
the price
do a
range
flat,
is.
we do a flat fee of whatever the meal is. And then, same with the thing, we were doing the football
Participation.
weekly dinners too, when they didn't have.
Oh, like their spaghetti supper type of deal?
Yeah, so we were doing meals for them also, for their team dinners. So, and that was at a part of our catering line that we were generating revenue through.
I like it.
Yeah, good. So, and then we started this month at the middle school, actually, our pilot program of pre-ordering, because I wanted to do it with the teachers first to see how it would work before we launched it with the kids in the high school. And that's been going very well, where the teachers pre-order, we have a separate area.
Yeah.
They go pick it up, they already paid for it, they come grab it, and they go. So they
Well,
don't have
that's
to wait.
nice.
So what can you get?
Soups,
Soups,
salads, sandwiches.
Meetings, whatever they
Yeah.
So can I pre-order and stop by?
Send me your email, we'll set you up.
We're gonna put you to work as a sub, though.
Yeah.
I will work as a sub, but I can be fed free.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just thinking on the way home for dinner, I can just like pre-order. I'm making it.
As long as it's before 2
It's a
o'clock.
good income. It's a good income stream.
Yeah, so it's been going very well with that, and we're hoping to launch that with the high school in January.
With the teachers in the high school?
No, with the kids.
Oh, okay.
So the kids can actually pre-order.
Oh, kind of like a Dunkin' Donuts Go type of deal?
Yeah, and they would have a separate kiosk that they would just go, in order to be prepaid for, they grab it, and they go eat.
Yeah.
Nice. I have a question, seriously though.
Yeah, seriously.
Like the kids that are staying like till 4 o'clock because they're of something. I'm just thinking they're ravenous because they eat lunch so early. They're pretty, they're ready to eat you out of, my experience has been they're ready to eat you out of house and home when they first get home. But there's not a way we can serve them as another opportunity to make money, revenue.
Let's cover some of the sporting teams.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Well, we do have our vending services that we have.
Just curious.
It's very risky if you were to set up some type of station.
Okay, just asking.
Well, because the kids can't take the food on the bus.
Oh, you're not allowed to eat on the bus?
No.
usually carry it with them.
Makes a mess.
Yeah.
And you don't know who has allergies on the bus or the next ride.
Okay, sorry.
I'm just looking at those, you know, there's a lot of traffic that's going, you know, through here, but again, somebody's got to be here after hours to monitor and then food put away, and so there's an inherent
just-
cost with that too. So.
Just curious.
All set?
I love it.
Build on the winter sport, the
Okay.
winter
Yeah.
sports are starting up now.
Mhm.
So if you could like email maybe the coaches of each of the teams or.
Yeah, but I've
the
been in
athletic
contact with the
directors.
athletic director.
Yeah, and just have them, because it ends up the parents, but the coaches then could tell who's the parent is the manager for the team.
Yeah.
And let them be aware that you have this service.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it's breaking the old, and I even had to do it with football. Like the first time they're like, oh, well, we'll try you out. And then after the first time they did it, they're like, oh, you can do it every week. And we want you to do the freshman games and the JV.
Great.
Because literally what we did is we build their meals. It goes in 3 coolers. It's by the back door. They come out to security. They pick up their coolers. They get on the bus and they go. Parents don't have to do anything.
Good.
So it's, you know, same type of thing with all of them. But
Now,
a
can
lot
they
of
eat on
it's
those
getting them
buses?
out of the routine of, well, they like to go to this restaurant or, so hopefully eventually we can get them all where they're trained in the way that we want them to do it and make it a lot easier for them. If we go to the actual number sheet that shows the meals.
It's on the back page, I think.
Yeah, on the back. You can see that year-to-date, we've done almost 2,000 more meals served for lunch than last year's numbers. And as when I first talked with you, I was saying how the elementary schools are our building blocks to eventually make the high schools the level where it should be. You can see that in the elementary schools, the lunch counts are up significantly compared to the middle and high school. And they've really taken to the fresh produce and doing some of the activities that we've been doing with them. So great, definitely. And then district-wide, percentage-wise, we had growth 2% in September and 1% in October over last year's numbers, and that's a district-wide number. Any questions on the numbers? All right, we can do the fun stuff now.
Okay.
All right, so the first one is going to be our Farm to School program that we've been involved with. We had our first annual Crunch Day. As you can see, we provided every student in the school district with an apple. At the elementary schools, we did actual countdown, so everyone got an apple. We did a countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They all crunched into it at the same time. See which wave could have the loudest crunch. And they were actually very excited, and then the next few days, they all wanted apples.
Yeah.
So it was a good way to trick them into fresh apples. The high school, they got me. Before, you see the before table, that's the after table. We actually set up the before table, and I went over to the elementary schools just to make sure they were all running properly. I came back, I forgot that they had a mid-morning break. All the apples were gone. So we actually had to set the table up again for lunch, and they went through 890 apples.
At the high school?
At the high school, one day. So they really took advantage of it. And these are some of the farms that we use. Scott's right here in town has been phenomenal to work with. They've got us some great products this year. Lily B. Haynes has been our rock star for, they eat everything. I bring them a bag. I brought them a bag of colored peppers. I'm like, here, try these out. I go back the next day. They're like, we need more.
I love peppers.
They were cutting up pepper strips and just putting them out in cups.
Oh,
And
they're
the kids
beautiful.
were blowing them out. And I said, I didn't go through that much in the rest of the district. But they really love the fresh stuff. So
Wow.
our theme days and getting back to the administrators at the individual buildings have been phenomenal with this, because I go in and say, oh, I want to set up a widescreen TV and I'm going to show highlights in the gaff, and they've been, oh, if you want to, go ahead and try it. So we did football kickoff party was our first theme day. We did it with the NFL actually has a whole program with their fuel up and play hard
60
and
for
all these different things. So we showed video highlights, we gave every kid a football card, they purchased lunch, and really got into the day. Then we did our World Series party. Same thing, we showed highlights from the past 40 years of baseball, so they saw a little bit of everything. And then we also gave the kids a baseball card to take home if they purchased lunch. They all wore their themed jerseys. It was a nice day. This is some of our catering we've been doing, the bike and catering services. You'll see the football team on the left-hand side. We've been feeding them on some of their team dinner meals. And then on the right, that was actually right after the blue ribbon announcement. They had a PD day, and we fed the staff, and we did some 6-foot subs, and that was from the local bakery on Main Street.
Oh, that's the best bakery.
Nice. Yeah, so he baked us the fresh 6-foot subs.
He's got the best
We
bread.
did them with the boar's head meat, and there wasn't much of those left either on the table. We did the Veterans Day. We had the cadets from the Coast Guard Academy in at the middle school, and then some of our past veterans. The lighting was a little better. You could see that cadet's face when he actually saw the pies that were lined up at the end of the thing. He was very excited. This is our new style we've been playing with at the high school. On the left, we had a sushi bar a couple weeks ago, and we actually had it again on Friday.
Nice.
So we set up a complete sushi bar using brown rice, so it's completely legal. And we actually sold out at 82 orders and turned away 30 kids.
Nice.
Wow.
Whoa.
Sushi bar, and then we also do an Asian fusion bar where they get the rice noodles and they actually build it themselves. We do, as you can see, there's fresh peppers, broccoli, green beans. We use all the DOD fresh produce and saute it for them fresh, put it in pans, and they pick what they want to build their bowl.
Nice.
And then this is my staff. It's kind of, I take a little pride in this because they're really, as they say, drinking the Kool-Aid. They're taking ownership of their programs. They're really taking pride in their work. You see how they're building a nice wrap there for the kids. They get to participate in Crazy Dress Day at Flanders. So they wore some crazy outfit that day that they were doing one of the theme days. And when I went up to take that picture of the grinder, I went up and they were all laying there saying, "Hi, how are you?" So it's kind of to show you that they were having a lot of fun. So that's been great seeing them take ownership of the program and wanting to see it grow.
Nice.
So,
Very
excellent.
good.
Thank you.
Excellent, Chris.
That's awesome.
Chris and Chuck, thank you very much. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Any
Thank you.
questions? Or?
No, but thank you for staying so late.
No, no problem.
Well, you're gonna, Mariana, every month they're gonna keep track of the numbers like that?
I can do that. Sure.
I don't, I'm not, I asked him, I was just curious what the.
Yeah, I keep track of it. Usually I get a report every month, and I can certainly, with the financials I do,
Yeah.
I can add the lunch counts. That's easy enough,
Yeah.
and then Chris can get me the
I-
participation
You know,
numbers.
it would just be good to keep an eye on it,
Yep.
just because.
But yeah, I do.
I don't want any, if it's good news, well, good news is always great, but I didn't want, if anything, kind of twists and
No,
turns
Chris
or
and I
whatever.
work together every month.
The board's aware that we're twisting and turning.
Yeah, nope. We work together every month at the end of the month and review everything.
Our Board of Finance is always after shared services. Chris would be interested in filling Salem bellies.
Is there currently a contract? Do they use?
Yes, we use a contractor. So that might be an area where cooperation could work. And I see Barbara shaking her head up and down.
Meals not any good there, Barbara?
Good.
Go get an apple.
Go get an apple.
I love apples and peppers.
I don't think we even have Apple String Apple Fest.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. That's because we ate them all at the Apple Festival the day before.
Crunch day, we wiped out all the
Okay.
crunch. I love
Good.
that idea.
Everybody all set?
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Next item is the CAVE Delegate Assembly follow-up. Jamie, did you make it?
I did.
And
It was Jill, Candace, and myself.
Okay.
I didn't make it.
Okay.
We It was an interesting evening in that we managed to revive some of those rejected CABE policies that they were throwing on the floor. We did manage to revive a few of them. The one for Thomaston, we managed to revive for them. If you give me one moment, I have to look at my notes. We managed to revive the online learning one for
Okay, yeah.
Thomaston.
Yeah.
CABE had sent it to the floor, but Vernon and East Lyme, put it back on the table, and it was approved by 22-3-1 vote to go up to the legislation. And that was the one for, it's the Thomaston Board of Education, like the Connecticut Association of Boards, urges the state and federal government to support programs and research that focus high-level 21st skills that are important for success in the global workplace. The state and federal government should support school district capacity to provide the technology and tools necessary to foster innovative learning practices and instructional methods that bridge school and real-world experiences, provide for greater personalization of education, and prepare students for college and/or career. So we pushed that up, and it's going to be part of the CABE package. So that was nice. I don't know why CABE was rejecting it. It didn't make any sense, because they're saying severe staff shortages, but everywhere else they're saying we don't have a staff shortage. So anyway, it ended up being revived and put on their agenda for the year. So it was interesting.
Anything to add, Jill?
No, I mean, this is the first time I've gone, and I really enjoyed it and learned. I was surprised how much I learned. And just listening to what some of the other board members, some of the other boards were saying, it's just interesting to be there and observe and learn more.
Good, good,
So
excellent,
I would go. Whoever
excellent.
hasn't gone, I'd certainly go. Plus, they serve great coffee. You need it about the time
You
get
need
there,
it,
which
yeah, I
is
gotta say,
3
yeah,
o'clock.
yeah. Good.
Great coffee.
Okay. Move on. Elementary redistricting update. Jeff, you want to?
Yes, just a few items. I've spoken with Mike Zuba from Malone and McBroom. He's just about completed the enrollment analysis. We have him scheduled to come to our December 18th meeting. It would be the 4th, December 4th, but he can't make it that evening. So he'll be here for the December 18th meeting to give a presentation and discuss the enrollment numbers. Yeah, I'll just give a little preliminary. His numbers look, very aligned, even a little higher than the last set we got from NESDAQ.
When you say higher, it means higher enrollment numbers, right?
Higher enrollment numbers projected out, over the next 10 years. So at that 10-year mark,
She will be through.
higher, yeah. Candace will be happy.
Hear that,
So
Candace?
if she's watching out there, yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm sure she is.
And then also, Mike, we're looking to set up a time for him to come in and look at and speak with O&G, myself, and talk about the phasing component and how redistricting ties in with that as well. So we're looking to have that happen before the 18th so we can report out on that too. So that's where we're at right now.
Excellent.
How much did we pay for him to do that? What was the final pricing on the
22.5?
contract?
28?
I think 22.5 or something like that.
I think 25. It's
Yeah.
25,
I just-
9, I think it was.
I was thinking 5,000, I thought.
But it's part of the,
Yes.
bonded money.
Yeah.
Okay, just curious, no, it's well worth it,
But
it sounds
it's,
like.
so far, and
Yeah.
is that- I don't know if you.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, it's going to be, well worth it also in coordination of the phasing of the program, which we're
Which is very
getting
important.
involved with, so.
We just didn't have the skills, no, I should say we didn't have the skill set, it was just.
No, we didn't have the skill set.
We didn't have the skill set.
Not to do a comprehensive,
I mean, we're all
Because
intelligent
we're
people.
not
Yeah.
redistrictors.
Yeah, you don't have the.
Well, you don't have it's the demographics,
Capacity
yeah.
to do the demographic work,
We
which
have
is.
the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
Time
committee,
was
trying to
important.
put that work
The amount
on
of
that,
time that-
on the
yeah.
committee
No.
made up of staff was,
That's right.
It's a whole nother job.
Yep, Linda got us straight on that one. Okay.
What's the
Yeah, go ahead.
timing that we'll start seeing scenarios from the redistricting?
Well,
First quarter?
yeah, January is when we want to pretty much be done with this process, so he
Okay.
should be
Okay.
kind of final report. And then what needs to follow is the community forums. So we start up with those. as well.
So he'll present scenarios in January that we review, and then we will then pick one and bring that to the...
I don't know for sure, Eric. I don't want to,
Okay. No, no, that's fine.
It's a little preliminary,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
But we can clear all that up,
Yep,
on the
that's
18th or
fine. Yep.
sooner. I can talk to him.
Yep.
So.
Good. Okay. Following along with that, the update on the elementary school alteration project next Tuesday?
November 28th.
28th.
O&G will be coming to the special town building committee meeting. And we'll be talking about the budget, O&G's budget, see where they're landing with, hopefully under the 37.5 million, obviously. So we'll be getting that breakdown. They weren't ready last week when we had our town building committee, and they still had some things that they were looking at. It's preliminary. They didn't want to bring that forward. So smart move. They waited. I think I mentioned, at the budget workshop, I mentioned, but I'll mention it again here, we had the second state meeting. We're back on track. Space standards waiver, that letter has been generated, done, signed, and we sent out this afternoon requesting the space standards waiver. We will be denied that waiver, and then we'll take it from there as to what next steps will be. And we'll see if we look legislatively or how we go from there. But we also, we're reaching out to Paul Formica, Senator Formica, and looking to set up a meeting to talk with him about that space standards waiver piece. So, good. That's in the works.
Good. Okay.
That's it.
All right, I think that's it on that.
Just quick, the next state review, really the final review is January 23rd. And then after that, we get a final approval. That'll be a full day meeting. Then we're ready to go out to bid. In February.
I think, overall, the project is on track to meet the goal of having the bidding process occur in February. Bill?
Did we initially set that meeting for the 30th?
We did, Bill.
Okay, I'm sorry,
we did. Yeah, after you,
Changed the date after I left.
After you left. We talked about it, and then we checked with Rocky.
I think he was standing right there. It just was so fast.
Was he? Maybe, I don't remember, but.
You getting the message yet, Bill?
We were putting it out, we just didn't get it out yet, so yes.
Rocky sent out an agenda.
I won't be able to make that.
It's Tuesday, that's right, yeah. Okay. All right.
Oh, wait, so what's happening November 28th?
When did she?
November 28th is the O&G is going to present their full.
To our building committee?
No, to the town building committee.
Yeah, so what's happened is that the architect has finished his design phase and delivered packets that are huge for each project. It must be like, one of these things weigh about 10 pounds, and there's 3 of them. They're pretty amazing, the level of detail.
They're staying there.
And then O&G is doing all of the pricing out of all of those things so that we know that we're where we are with respect to the budget.
Where's our board building committee in all this?
That's this one. It's it's easy to call the town building committee, but actually what it is, it's a special building committee authorized by the Board of Selectmen to oversee the elementary school project.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm confused. That's all right.
Al Chikunsky and company will be coming to the December 4th or the December 18th meeting. And I think I scheduled for was it the 18th? I don't know if you remember. One of the 2 December meetings, he's going to be coming forth, giving more information, kind of some of the snapshot of what he's been doing with the town building committee as well. So he can give a more comprehensive update for everybody here.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
I'll check again.
Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
That's it. Yep. That's it.
Okay. All right. Moving on to the next item, which is the student assessment result presentation. Hi.
Yeah, we always do these on the night that's the longest.
Let's do a read of the room. I just want to be really educators. We read the room. We look at school climate. We look at classroom climate. Do you want me to engage in this discussion right now? It's going to be a steady 30 minutes tops.
I was going to say, because we are at the 9 o'clock point, and
Yeah,
some of
I
us,
agree.
some of us have been here since
Some of us get
5.
hangry.
Levels are dropping.
Yeah, Lee and Barbara have been here since 5. and Alan here, so
I ran Mariano's and got a bowl of soup.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm really excited, I'm like very, very
Yes,
excited
I
about
really
this. I
want to
wanna-
hear this,
I wanna
but
focus
I'm
on it.
also really hungry and really tired.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Move it.
And I've got this special ed hangover. What
Well,
was this
no.
presentation?
Got a special ed hangover.
I'm like shaking in my boots.
Okay.
And there's no, I mean, it's information, so we'll just make sure we get this at the beginning of the next meeting.
Lynn passed out my part of the presentation. I will also pass out the high school as well, so that you're going to leave the room tonight with the data.
Good.
Okay? So you'll have it and you can look at it. If you want any more data, just give me a call, because I have plenty that I can disperse to you, and then we'll just move it. If that's okay?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Let's be real about where we're at.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Thank you for reading the room.
You're welcome. Domain 1 for a reason.
I move a special appreciation award for Amy.
Oh, my God. Way too much fun there. Okay.
Okay.
All right, let's see. We've got, whoops, I'm sorry. We've got one policy for first reading.
No, we have two
Thank you, Lynn.
policies.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, we do. Yeah, I forgot.
Can I just ask one
Okay, we got
question?
2.
I'll go quick. Are we ever going to revisit this study again?
Yeah, that was the action was that we will hear from Jeff and Kim and the administrative team as to what their thinking is, the plan is for dealing with all the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure.
Okay. Okay, so first reading, the first one is what, policy
All right.
3541?
This is a first reading of a recommended Board of Ed, revision to Board of Ed policy 3541, non-instructional operations transportation. It is a cleanup because it's been 20-some plus years on this policy that it hasn't been touched. So we've cleaned it up and we've brought it into the 21st century. And we brought the regulation to the same place. We wanted everything to be in line. This is the one where we made some changes into student drop-off. Without a parent and with a parent, with the ages that and we're giving the bus drivers permission to make a judgment call when dropping off at a stop. So we've kind of just cleaned it up and we've changed the language a little bit. So there's a lot of changes in this one, so you're going to want to definitely read it and go over it.
Let me just add that this is also where we developed a new incident reporting form for the bus company to use. They reviewed it, they made one suggestion, so I'll sit with Teresa Landry to look to finalize that so we can put that in place, as well as part of the regulation side.
Great. Okay. Everybody else out on that one? And then the next one, 5141.
The next one is a first reading recommended revision of Board of Ed policy 51415, students' suicide prevention and intervention. And like the other policy, it's been a long time since it has been addressed and talked about. We brought it up to current practices, so it's in line with what we're doing as a district.
Okay. Everybody else okay with that? All right, that brings us to administration reports. Jeff, anything to add?
Just quick, given the budget, I'd sent out some information to you today. Again, you know, it keeps changing. We don't know, this number could change now, but our most recent impact went up significantly, you know, from the 67,000 that we potentially needed to cut or find. It's up to 545,392. That's the Board of Ed's impact, and the town's impact is 280,959. So those two numbers are what we're dealing with right now. We talked a little bit about at FFO, so we'll bring more information forward when we start to develop a listing where we're going to find these cuts in our budget for the rest of this year.
That's
this year's current, yes, thank you, George. That's this current year's budget, so that's a significant number.
That is the new total cut.
That's the new total cut that has come forth, both on the Board of Ed side and the town side. So we're dealing with both of those. So again, we'll work through what areas we're going to have to cut. I froze, as I mentioned, the budget's been frozen, so for this current year, and we'll go from there.
I'm sorry, the new total, but Mark made it sound like the new total is only for the quarter?
No, we receive quarterly payments of
But it
the
sounded like the new
municipalities.
total wasn't a fixed new total, that there could be...
Well, it might not, it could change again, but
We don't know.
this is based off of that, it's called the holdbacks, the state budget bulletin.
Yeah, I read what you had emailed out.
Yeah, they're saying the funding could always be released at a later time. We could see, a change, but their thought was that it's not going to change. They don't anticipate that happening, is what they stated in here. But I don't know. We would hope that maybe we wouldn't have to see that much. But this is the difficulty in not knowing or going back and forth, because we're freezing the budget, then we're not freezing the budget. We're holding, then it's almost December, so we've already spent, a chunk of our budget as well. So, George?
Just for some good news, the Connecticut congressional delegation is on board with a plus up to the defense budget. The 3rd Virginia class is included in this year's budget. Newport News and EB will have to compete for that, but the likelihood is that we're going to see some growth in southeastern Connecticut for a change.
Which is good. Yeah, absolutely. So stay tuned. We'll bring more information back on on that as we work through it and process through. That's it. The blue ribbon. We were looking at December 4th for a brief ceremony out here. We want to invite the community. I mentioned that 2 meetings ago. So we're going to do that before the next Board of Ed meeting on December 4th.
I saw the plaque over there in the office. Very impressive.
Yeah.
We have a flag, they gave us 2, and we put them up.
Oh, really?
Nice.
Yeah,
Neat.
So I'll work with the high school and Mr. Susi on, as we put that together.
Will it be catered by our new wonderful food
It
services
will.
department?
We might have to serve breadcrumbs and water.
They will be the best breadcrumbs we've ever
It will be the best breadcrumbs you've ever had.
That's right.
Try and double up on the maple.
croutons.
Croutons, so.
Croutons and salad dressing, I'm
And
fine.
happy Thanksgiving. So I wish everybody happy Thanksgiving.
Creamy
as well.
garlic
So,
dressing for Mr.
Enjoy the rest of the week.
Croutons, I'm good to go.
Amy, do you have any more, anything you want to
Besides reading her room.
What's your other talents? Come on.
No, I think over the last week, I attended a training with my executive assistant and a couple of our administrators here. And as part of that training, I had a major reflection, which was a good accountability measure for me. I am not in the classrooms as much as I'd like to be right now. I am engaging with teachers in content-based committees, so they're coming to me, but I'm not necessarily going to them and being in their space. So one of the measures that I'm holding myself to accountable to is after the Thanksgiving break that I will spend 2 half days a week just in classrooms. Because my job here is to raise student achievement and growth, so I need to be where that's occurring. So that was a nice reflection, and with the help of Lee helping schedule me and get me there, I will be there. But that has been a reflection of mine, that I'm engaging with teachers, with them coming to me, but I need to be going and being in their space more often. So that's a reflection for me.
ambitious.
Yeah.
Well, plus
so-
it gets them out of their classrooms and they're not teaching.
Yeah, I mean, as I see it, my job, like I said, is to raise the student achievement. And if I'm not in with students and I'm not in with teachers in those conversations, then what am I really doing here? So that was a major reflection of mine as we engaged in that training, that's really my task at hand. So that's something I will work on. But happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a wonderful holiday. Thank you.
Mariana, how's the budget?
That's what I'm working on. I am
You are
working on
working-
budget.
Good. Good. Okay. Committee reports, I do know, we had a policy review committee for an hour this evening.
So we had a policy committee meeting, and we didn't make it through one policy.
It was a robust discussion.
It was a very heavy policy. Field trips. That encompasses the reasoning for them, international, out-of-state, medical care during a field trip. It's a very weighty policy, and it's taking a lot of our time, but it's got a lot of stuff in it, so we'll be meeting again about it. But I'm also going to do a committee report on letter number E also, because I'm a little aggravated as a taxpayer and as the Board of Ed rep that they keep canceling their Board of Finance meetings.
Oh, they did again? Oh,
They
really?
canceled their Board of Finance meeting. I was on my way out the door to the meeting, pulled the agenda, and it was canceled.
Yeah.
But as a taxpayer, it irritates me because their standing agenda item is public discussion, and we are all taxpayers in this town, and we should be able to go during a meeting to talk to our Board of Finance members. So that's my committee report on that.
And we had an FFO committee meeting.
Sure, go ahead.
So the big topics we covered, we talked about the budget status for this year and things generally, still early in the year, things are going well though. And Mariana has improved the reporting sheet, much to our liking. For those who like numbers, and most of us do, it's great. There's lots of numbers, lots of columns, lots of stuff to look at, so we thank you, Mariana. It actually, it really is good. We did a review of Coastal Connections. We did a financial review to understand the costs, and I think the quick summary, and we need to do more, but the quick summary is the cost for a Coastal Connections student versus the cost for a student in the high school is largely the same. It's not, the biggest difference can be is the number of students we have enrolled in Coastal Connections, which can fluctuate year to year. But in general, last year it was less. This year we're a little under, so it's tracking a little higher. But in general, it's about the same Coastal Connections student cost versus a cost of a high school student. And the last item, we started to talk about cost-saving measures given the new cost savings, cuts, the reduction, whatever, and obviously a lot more to go, a lot more to do on that.
Good.
That's it.
Okay, all right. That brings us up to board comments and future agenda topics. Jamie?
I have a few. Okay, my first one is Mark Salerno told me that swearing-in ceremony is at the community center December 4th at 4 o'clock. So those of you need to know that. My second one is if you are interested in donating to the Miracle League told Dave Putnam that if they raised $25,000 by Thanksgiving, that they would match it. So as of the 17th, Park and Rec had raised $21,530. So they're $3,400 short of their match goal. Wow. So if anyone would like to donate, it's miracleleaguect.org/east-lime if you want to donate to that. Also,
/ what, Jamie?
miracleleague.org/east-lime. If you would like to donate, Miracle League will match any donation. They'll match the $25,000 if we get there by Thanksgiving.
Send it to me, I'll push it out to
And
everybody
I'll push it to
tomorrow.
you.
I can email it out to them.
Bayberries of Dove Niantic is donating 100% of proceeds from the sale of the children's book Santa's Sleigh to the Miracle League. Arthur Murray Dance Studio in Niantic will be donating proceeds from their Teach-a-thon January 2nd and 12th and 13th, and East Lyme High School will be donating proceeds from the extravaganza and Jeans Day to the project.
Good. Wow. Very good, Jamie.
So that's that. And then my third thing is going to make me cry and be emotional, but I'm going to do it anyway. So Saturday, I was at CABE, and I was at an opioid addiction breakout session with the Assistant U.S. Attorney and the DEA. And they are doing free assemblies at high schools across the state to students during the day and parents at night. East Lyme is one of the many schools in the state that have not taken them up on this.
Oh, my God.
I was called out by the DOJ and by the DEA that they need to be here. When they found out I was from East Lyme, they pulled me aside and they said they need to be here. So I will get you their email and their phone number so that we can get them in our schools and our towns, please. Please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie.
We didn't know.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie.
So thank you.
Good.
And that is it.
That it?
Yep.
Other comments?
The workshops that I attended, I thought were well worth attending. I really enjoyed the speakers as well. I think there are some things that we need to add to future agenda items, based on conversations. One being the law going into effect about, student data and information. And, I think a couple of workshops were worth bringing up as future agenda items as well. But I thought it was a day well spent.
Good. Excellent. Eric, did you have your hand?
Yeah, in terms of future agenda items, so number 1, we covered off today. I'll probably take 7 and 8 off because we've been pretty good about having those as standing agenda items. And then I'd like to add, because I'd really like to hear Kim's view, and it sounds like we're going to, but on, we heard an opinion. I'd like to know kind of the East Lyme viewpoint based on some of the data. It seems like there's some cleanup we can do, but I'd like to understand kind of your assessment. Sounds like we're going to do it, but it'd be nice to put it on the agenda just so we have it.
Good. Excellent. Other comments? Just
Do we want to take up item number 3, or you want to do a full board update? Is that what that's about?
3 is what we had talked about, is that there's still probably more of this overview of goals and metrics and what is their purpose and all that. The financial piece, I think we've covered off.
So we did, just a couple things, we did receive our recognition award at CABE for the fifth year running. I actually think we've gotten them even more years than that, but it was nice. And we had our picture taken with the commissioner. So it was good. We had good. It was good. It was good. I think the CABE meeting was very good and very informative. The session that I went to, one of them was universal screening, which is set screens for depression, anxiety, and substance abuse, which I just talked briefly with Kim and just two sentences with Jeff, but. Very interesting what they're doing in the Old Saybrook, because they've had a series of suicides and related to very high opiate addiction problems in Old Saybrook. And they have implemented a whole program where they basically do very specific screening for those mental, what I call anxiety, depression, and substance abuse potential. And they've had, it looks like they're having quite a bit of success. I did notice that their special ed money is quite a bit higher than ours as well, so it was kind of interesting. But I thought it was very informative. There's a huge, enormous slide deck, which I was going to pass on to Kim, and maybe that'll be a future agenda topic at some point, so. Okay, good. Anything else? No? Board let's see, that brings us to public comment. Any member want to talk? Nope. With that, we do have a need for executive session, so we will take a brief recess and come back to go into executive session. Back to go into executive session. Back to go into executive session. Back to go into executive session.